Check, check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. You got it? Okay, well, good. Thanks, Todd. Yay, we'll check in with you in just a second.
I just wanted to say that I'm going to miss the NOAA conference, but that's only because it's scheduled exactly the same time as the annual meeting for my company. We're New Jersey, where I'm attending. So I'm retiring at the end of this year, so there's my question. I don't want to miss that. So Karen will be coming. I would come, but I just want to.
Well, we should have it recorded so you'll be able to at least watch the keynote. That's going to be that Stephen Hassan, the cult expert, mind control guy. So
Very good. Glad to hear this.
congratulations on the retirement. Probably bittersweet. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, okay. The sound was off on the screen. Okay, so a button got pushed. Man, I tell you, my buttons get pushed a lot around here too. So, but thank you, Todd, for unpushing the button. That's that's one. Well, good to have you guys joining us on Zoom. As I was saying, the only real announcement you missed was I was reminding folks about our NAUA yearly summit happening the weekend of October 18th through the 20th. It's going to be in person here in Spokane, or of course folks can attend remotely. So please go online if you haven't done so yet and register. We'd love to have as many folks participate as possible, including our friends on Zoom. So how are you guys doing today?
We're doing well. We're a little worried we were going to miss you, but we're not now. Thank you, Todd, for getting this fixed up.
Well, yes, Todd, thank you very much for figuring it out. He almost always does, so that much is good. I was ready to call you and say, hey, get out of Zoom and go back in, but that wouldn't have helped. So, let's see. We've got looks like a good number of folks attending this morning, and where's some of the locations? I see a lot of folks here on the west side, Pacific Northwest. Anybody from anywhere else?
Laureen, where are you?
I'm good, thanks, and I'm from Corvallis, Oregon.
Oh yes, Corvallis, yes. Good to see you again.
But it's Pacific Northwest, so.
Right, and it looks
Sorry,
like...
I have dogs.
Well, very good. So is everybody enjoying a little bit of break from the heat where you're at and getting some rain? We've got cloudy skies and had a bit of rain this morning. No?
No.
Nope.
All right, well,
You're
sorry
on the
about
peninsula. We're cool. It's cool here, but I know Oregon and California are struggling.
Right. Yeah, well, we've got a bit of a respite here, but it's certainly, I'll be talking a bit about the global warming crisis in my sermon. Not that I'll offer any solutions other than great to have all of you with us, and thanks for with you just a bit in the mornings too. So welcome to everyone. So you just greeted one another, so we are going to go ahead and move forward with lighting our chalice, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our hope to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
The opening words are from Susie Kassem from Rise Up and Salute the Sun. I have been finding treasure in places I did not want to search. I have been hearing wisdom from tongues I did not want to listen to. I have been finding beauty where I did not want to look. And I have learned so much from journeys that I did not want to take. Forgive me, for I have been closing my ears and eyes for too long. I have learned that miracles are only called miracles because they are often witnessed by those who can see through all of life's illusions. I am ready to see what really exists on the other side, what exists behind the blinds, and taste all the ugly fruit instead of all that looks right, plump, and ripe.
Please join us now as we sing 123 out of the great hymnal, Spirit of Life. Stand as you're willing and able, and we will sing this through twice. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the words of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
All right, we're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds this morning. And we begin with a candle, as we have been, on behalf of the people of Ukraine and that part of the world who are suffering from the war and violence there, as well as a candle for the people of Israel and the Palestinian people who are suffering from the terrors going on in that part of the world. We do have a candle of celebration today. I know that it was mentioned a few weeks ago. Joyce Lanphier had her 90th birthday recently, and even though it was announced, she wasn't here for us to sing happy birthday to. So why don't we sing Joyce's back there now? She's listening to every word. There's a smile. I can't believe you're 90 years old, except for your hearing. But otherwise, the way you move is you're got lots of energy and vibrancy. But anyway, we're going to sing happy birthday to you. And I'm not going to be near the microphone when that happens, trust me. And many more, a major...
19 more. She wants 19 more.
Plus 1 day. Well, good. Hey, we're getting close to being able to achieve that, so hang in there. All right, and we normally take a moment of silence on behalf of others, but I think let's end on that joyous note. That felt good. So we will move forward now with our offering, which we now gratefully give and receive. The offering, of course, as we often say, sustains this community and our mission to the larger world. Thank you, Maura, for that beautiful piece, and thank you, Gordon, for being our song leader today. I appreciate that very much, too. It's time for our story for all ages, so we have people of all ages here, at least up to 90. I think there's probably a couple that are equally as vibrant who've achieved that milestone. But since we have no children here for our children's moment, I brought a child. This is a friend of mine. Some of you will recognize. He's been frequent here. This is Eddie. Can you say hello, Eddie? So long. Oh, you don't want to say hi? Yes. Well, then say hi. No. I'm sorry. You may remember that Eddie is nicknamed Obstinate Eddie, because Eddie tends to do the opposite of everything that he's asked. For example, Eddie, would you please look to your right? That's your left. Would you please look to your left? That's your right. Eddie, look up. Look down. Open your mouth. Close your eyes. So as you can see, he's very obstinate. But Eddie, honestly, how are you doing? Terrible. Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. Have you been enjoying your summer? Not at all. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so glad. Well, listen, one of the reasons I invited you here today is because you are so obstinate and like to do the opposite of what others say and ask you to do. So this reminds me of a story I once heard. Somebody, actually a Native American teacher I had when I was studying for ministry, actually at the hospital when I was doing clinical pastoral education, said to me toward the end of it, Todd, you're a Heyoka. Well, I'd never heard this word before, and he explained that it's a Lakota Indian word that refers to someone who does things backwards. Isn't that fascinating? It's doring. Okay. Well, anyway, it's based on the legend of Aya, who went to ask the great and terrible the great and terrible Thunderbird to help his people who were suffering from hunger and sickness. But nobody had ever survived meeting the Thunderbird, who lives in a counterclockwise dimension in which everything is the opposite of our own. Wouldn't you like that? Not at all. Okay. Anyway, the thunderbird could not be understood because it even speaks backwards and moves backwards and is terrifying to look at. Some who have just caught a glimpse of thunderbird from a distance have gone insane. Its formless body constantly billows and changes like passing clouds. It has claws but no feet, wings but no shoulders, and a loud thundering voice but no throat. It shoots deadly thunderbolts from its eyes and has been known to swallow entire whales and ships in a single gulp. Are you frightened?
Not in the least.
Okay. All right, well, anyway, when Aya finally arrives to stand before the great and terrifying thunderbird, instead of cowering in fear, Aya does the opposite. He begins by laughing and standing on his head and walking on his hands. "You pitiful thing," he taunts. "Your small voice frightens no one. Your weak eye can't hurt anyone. Your beak and your teeth are useless. Your wings look tattered like tattered rags, and your talons are like flimsy blades of grass. I'm embarrassed to be in your company. I'm not afraid of you in the least." He insulted the great thunderbird. And what do you think happened?
Nothing.
No. Instead of being angry, Thunderbird was the opposite. He said, "Your words have greatly pleased me, for I prefer always being addressed in terms opposite the intentions of those before me." And then the strange creature invited Aya to place his teepee next to his own lodge on Thunderbird Mountain and promised that together they would work to turn the world around and make it better for everyone. And from that point on, Aya becomes a Heoka and begins talking backwards and walking backwards and cross-dressing and even starts growing younger. You know the moral to this story, don't you?
Yes.
Okay, you don't want me to tell you?
No.
Well, glad you do. If we want to turn the world around, sometimes we have to start by turning ourselves around and doing the opposite of what we've been doing. Did you like that story?
No.
Oh, I'm so glad. Now, do me a favor and say, "You're welcome," and "hello."
Thank you and goodbye.
Good, now stand up straight. Okay, I think that's it for me.
For the meditation this morning, the words of Barack Obama. We are reminded that in the fleeting time we have on this earth, what matters is not wealth or status or power or fame, but rather how well we have loved and what small part we have played in making the lives of other people better.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burden be, then I am still until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. There is no life without its hunger. Each restless heart beats so imperfectly. But when you come and I am filled with wonder, sometimes I think I glimpse eternity. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Wonderful, Gordon. Thank you. For the past 2 years, a pair of robins have built their nest beneath the awning of our front porch, each of which ended up containing 4 bright blue eggs. All 4 of last year's eggs hatched, and I was able to observe the daily progress of the healthy hatchlings until one morning there were only 2. And this wasn't because they had matured well enough to fly away, but because a robin's nest is ultimately only large enough to contain 2 healthy hatchlings. 2 of them were destined to be squeezed out from the start. In this year's nest, one of the eggs was stolen by crows even as the hatchling was breaking through. One failed to hatch altogether, perhaps damaged by the crow attack, leaving 2 healthy chicks to hatch and fill that tight space. As those 2 grew and were getting close to leaving, one of them fell to its death. I put a rubber mat down to spare the surviving fledgling from succumbing to the same fate. So that's only 3 out of 8 that lived long enough to have a chance at life. This is but one example of the harsh reality of life. Nature must be extremely inefficient in order to guarantee some life can continue. It wastes life and a lot of potential life to make life. Not only has sexual reproduction evolved to produce millions of times more gametes, such as sperm, egg, seed, fruit, pollen, and spores, than will ever reproduce, but as in the case of these robins, the majority of the lives that are produced don't survive long enough to mature. The majority of creatures born on earth don't survive long enough to mature. The result is that there are far more robins born than there are mature robins, far more fruit than there are fruit trees, far more pollen than flowers, far more fertilized fish eggs than fish, and so forth. And throughout most of human history, until it began to change in the 19th century, it's estimated that as many as half of all human children died within their first 5 years. According to the World Health Organization, things have improved a lot since then, especially since 1990, when there were 12.5 million children who died within their first 5 years. That was just 3.7% of the population compared to 50, tragic as that number is. In 2022, there were only 4.9 million such deaths, about half of whom were newborns, and 80% of whom were from sub-Saharan Africa or Southeast Asia, which tells us that the economic imbalances in the world still have a lot to do with childhood mortality, even in our modern times. If our solar system is any indicator, the entire universe is just as inefficient. Consider all the time and space there is compared to what must be an infinitesimally small amount of life in comparison. Life that took billions of years to come into existence only to result in our minuscule lifespans. I bring all of this up because in order to discuss the nature of evil, the name that we often give to all this suffering and loss, we must begin by admitting that evil is a human concoction, that neither nature nor the universe are inherently good or evil. They just are. Nature and the universe don't care how many of us die, which so far is all of us, so long as a few of us live long enough to pass along the information encoded within us, including robins. That's the cold reality. It's how evolution happens, not the result of angry gods who require our appeasement because of something we did wrong. But evil can be considered relatively real to us because that's how we experience suffering and death and try to do our best as human societies to alleviate as much of it as we can. Those among us who intentionally cause others to suffer and die, or who simply prevent them from achieving their full potential and living a happy life, are rightly, from our human perspective, called evil, or at least engage in evil acts and systems. As human beings, we do care and are saddened by the deaths of our loved ones, moved by the grief of those who have lost theirs, and consider the loss of any child a tragedy for us all, as we should. The other thing to remember about morality in general is that it is a perennial philosophical problem. One may feel certain that one's beliefs about what are good and evil is correct, but one's level of certainty proves nothing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is certain that he knows what good and evil are, and therefore feels entirely justified in killing as many innocents as necessary to achieve his moral ends. The United States and Soviet Union, along with a few other nations, were certain that amassing a global arsenal of more than 80,000 nuclear warheads during the Cold War, enough to destroy the entire planet many times over, was the right thing to do. Our understanding of what is good and what is evil usually coincides with our own interest as individuals and as societies. The result, according to social psychologist Erich Fromm, is the acceptance of a relativistic position which proposes that value judgments and ethical norms are exclusively matters of taste or arbitrary preferences, and that no objectively valid statement can be made in this realm. But must we leave it at this? He asked. Are we to accept the abdication of reason in a matter of ethics? Are we to believe that the choices between freedom and slavery, between love and hate, between truth and falsehood, between integrity and optimism, between life and death, are only the results of so many subjective preferences? Fromm offers us another choice: to base our understanding of morality upon our human condition, psychology, and needs, regardless of what is true of the larger universe, regardless of the epistemological problems of holding any truth with absolute certainty. We can simply choose to live in a way that promotes human welfare and individual unfolding so that both humanity and each individual can achieve our full potential. He refers to this, as you've often heard me say, as the humanistic ethic, explaining that formally it is based on the principle that only humanity itself can determine the criterion for virtue and sin, and not an authority transcending humanity. Materially, it is based on the principle that good is what is good for humanity, and evil is what is detrimental to humanity, the sole criterion of ethical value being human welfare. Right? We can't know truth from an absolute perspective, but we can know it from the relative perspective of being humans. This includes recognizing our relatedness to others and to the world. It's not anthropocentric, including to the environment and other creatures. Summarized as the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Fromm says, all men are in need of help and depend on one another. Human solidarity is the necessary condition for the unfolding of any one individual. For anyone to truly love one another, but love isn't an emotion, it's a way of behaving towards others. Humanism recognizes our common humanity, connecting us to all people everywhere. The most fundamental kind of love, Fromm says, would be care, respect, knowledge of any other human being, the wish to further that person's life. This is the kind of love the Bible is characterized by its very lack of exclusivity. Yet throughout human history, our societies have been built around grave inequalities, in which a few have had all the power and wealth and rights at the expense of everyone else. Kings and commoners, nobles and serfs, patricians and plebeians, pharaohs and peasants, commanders and infantries, and so forth. The hierarchic ethic, which may work sometimes to the benefit of a larger society in that it provides some stability and security, isn't humanistic because it is not enough to maintain the greater good at the expense of the individual's need to flourish, at the expense of freedom. The humanistic ethic, by contrast, recognizes that individuals cannot thrive if one is not free to reason and choose for oneself. It is an ethic recognized in the universal golden rule that calls upon us to treat others the way we would like to be treated, which is predicated on a belief in our common humanity. Why would we treat others the way we want to be treated unless we recognized our common humanity? And it is not limited then to our common religion or our common king or our common nation or our common ethnicity or our common political party or our common identity or any other closed circle that feels justified in discriminating against or abusing those outside. The humanistic ethic encompasses the whole hoop of the world, and every human society and individual upon it. The humanistic ethic is reflected in the Enlightenment philosopher Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative. Right? I mean, it goes all the way back and everywhere in the Golden Rule, but Kant referred to it as never treat others as a means to your own ends, but as an end within themselves. And was revamped again during the French Revolution as the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that all people are born with innate inherent dignity. An articulation of the principle, which of course has ended up embedded in many democratic constitutions, and until recently was the Unitarian Universalist Association's first principle. Sad that it's no longer the case, at least for them. But I prefer Fromm's mid-20th century definition that the principle that good is what is good for humanity and evil what is detrimental to humanity, the sole criterion of ethical value being human welfare, and that the unfolding and growth of every person should be the aim of all social and political activities. Everything we do as a society, everything we have. It doesn't mean we should have a government that gives everything to its citizens, but we should have a government that creates systems that provide not only the very basics, but what is necessary for us to fully achieve our potential. If our economy is not working to make that happen, then our economy is a failed economy. I also prefer Fromm's explanation of the humanistic ethic because it parallels Abraham Maslow's well-known hierarchy of human needs, which likewise addresses general human welfare at the bottom half of the pyramid: clean air, food, water, shelter, clothing, sleep, health, employment, security, and so on. And what is necessary for individual unfolding at the top half of the pyramid: friendship, society, belonging, family, self-respect, self-actualization. Societies that concentrate on only one half of the pyramid's needs, by providing basic needs at the cost of one's freedoms or guaranteeing one's freedom at the expense of the masses, are not living according to the humanistic ethic and contribute to the denigration and suffering of both society and the individual. To live according to the humanistic ethic requires us to establish rights, rules, and regulations. That's why Enlightenment thinkers believed in government, believed it was not the problem, but the solution. And governments which fail to solve humanity's problems are failed governments. But they need to establish rights, rules, and regulations that enable both society and the individual to progress. Right? If it's in communism, you've got food, shelter, clothing covered, but the individuals are suppressed. That's a failed economy. If in a great capitalist country like our own, individuals are free to reach the heights of wealth, even as the masses don't have enough to provide basic health care or increasingly afford to live in a home, that's a failed economy, no matter how free we are. So from all of this, we can conclude that if what is good is what is good for human welfare and individual unfolding, then what is evil from a humanistic perspective must be considered whatever is detrimental to these dual goals, including any systems disregarding our common humanity in order to favor one group of people at the expense of other groups of people. Recognizing this, we are now in a position to consider the evils currently happening in our world and have solid reason for making such claims. Evil is that which rejects our common humanity, disregards the inherent worth and dignity of every person and all peoples, no matter where they are from, what they look like, or what they believe, and otherwise undermines human welfare and individual freedom and growth. That's what evil is from our perspective as human beings. As a human being, you have a license to accept that definition, despite the perennial philosophical problems of the nature of good and evil, which is Fromm's brilliance, in my opinion. But before discussing real and present examples of pure evil, I also want to point out that, in my opinion, the humanistic view of ethics implies that only humans can commit evil acts, whether collectively or as individuals. And while there are certain natural calamities like hurricanes and droughts and diseases that cause humans to suffer, nature does not do so with the intention of causing us to suffer. Wild animals can also be dangerous and deadly to humans, but their behaviors are without malice. Lions and sharks and grizzly bears and even mosquitoes, among other predators, only do what evolution has designed them to do. Evil, rather, is a human concept and is caused by humans who willfully and knowingly ignore the negative impacts of their actions upon the welfare of others. I've already mentioned, for example, that the evil that is already currently happening in the Middle East, war in general, is evil because it is clearly detrimental to human welfare and individual flourishing and is rooted in the failure of one side to see the humanity, the worth, and the dignity of the other. Sadly, sometimes war is necessary in order to defend a people against outside aggressors, like Russia's current invasion of Ukraine. But doing so in a manner that indiscriminately blames and kills masses of innocent civilians in the process, or destroys their homes, their hospitals, their schools, and infrastructures, is, according to the humanistic ethic, pure evil. The 18th century French Revolution began as a just effort to increase human welfare and individual freedoms by addressing social inequalities and abolishing monarchy. Like all such revolutions, it was necessarily violent. But in 1793, 4 years after it began, the revolutionaries became perpetrators of such evils themselves by executing thousands of people during a year of savagery known as the Reign of Terror. That's pure evil. Global warming is also an evil. One of the worst ever, because it is one of the planet's greatest existential threats to human welfare in the entire 4.5 billion year history of the planet. Unlike naturally occurring disasters, global warming is an evil because it has been caused by unmitigated human activity. Scientists have known about the greenhouse gas effect since the turn of the 20th century, which has increasingly been taken seriously by the public since the 1960s. So much so that in 1970, Republican President Richard Nixon formed the Environmental Protection Agency. Only a few years later, after he was elected in 1976, Democratic President Jimmy Carter created the Energy Department, lowered the national speed limit to 55 miles per hour, rolled out green tax credits, and installed 32 solar panels on the White House roof. As one of the worst polluters and carbon emitting nations in the world, we were on our way to becoming the global leader in addressing climate change before things worsened to the point that they are today. But after Ronald Reagan took office in 1980, he removed the solar panels, raised the speed limit to as high as 75 miles per hour, and his anti-government, anti-regulation philosophy made neglecting the environment fundamental to the conservative cause. Reagan created a conservative party that's against conservation. And ever since, it has lied and denied and blocked any meaningful response to this unfolding existential threat. At first, they simply confused many American voters by falsely claiming global warming is a hoax and that there is much disagreement among scientists about it. They also made us think that any effort to protect the environment would cost jobs. Binary choice. When George H. Bush was running against Bill Clinton in 1992, for example, he mocked Clinton's VP pick, Al Gore, as Ozone Man, further saying, "This guy is so far out in the environmental extreme, we'll be up to our necks in owls and out of work for every American." Later, when his son, George W. Bush, was running against Gore, Bush joked that his opponent likes electric cars, he just doesn't like to make electricity. Bush ended up winning that election by a vote of 5-4. When the partisan Supreme Court decided it would be unconstitutional to allow Florida to recount its votes, which would have most certainly proven that Gore had actually won that election. In order to unfold as individuals, we need to be free. And that means having our voices heard and our votes counted. So the Supreme Court's decision is another evil of our modern times. The same Supreme Court that recently decided that a woman's right to choose ought to be left up to the states, including the state of Florida that doesn't have the right to recount its votes in a questionable election. That's pure evil. And let's get back to global warming. During the brief 4 years between Bush's SCOTUS appointment to the White House and his second term, the impacts of global warming became too fierce to deny in just that brief period. So the GOP strategy was to subtly shift their argument from "it's a hoax and scientists greatly disagree about whether or not it's happening" to "it's a natural cyclic occurrence and scientists greatly disagree about what's causing it." I'm like an elephant on these things, man. I never forget. Yet even as each year for the past decade has been the hottest on record, the grand old party continues to block any meaningful response to this perilous problem, including intentionally pulling out of any plan to work on it as a global community, like the Paris Climate Agreement. Instead, all we hear from them is border, 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 as if it is the greatest and only problem the U.S. faces. Yes, between 100,000 and 200,000 border encounters, not crossings, but encounters with immigrants per month is a serious problem that has to be dealt with. Right? It overwhelms particularly those border states, those border communities. But doing so by separating children from their families, locking them in cages on a hard floor, and not keeping any records of whom they belong to, that's pure evil. So is claiming you want to do something about the issue and blaming your political opponents for doing nothing, even after you block meaningful bipartisan legislation to address it, just so your opponents can't get any of the credit in an election year. Pure evil. But I'm not done with global warming yet. Last summer, like my entire neighborhood, I was evacuated. We were evacuated from our home because of a fire. Get out, leave everything. Today, the homes in my neighborhood are at risk of losing fire insurance because of that event. And just last week, there was another fire threatening my neighborhood again, as well as our local church. Even so, I recall a Mitt Romney interview recently in which he spoke about the move to oust the Speaker of the House, calling it a distraction and saying, we have important issues to address, like the border. That was it. It was the only thing on his list. Period. Likewise, during a February 27th press conference, House Speaker Mike Johnson himself said, the first priority of the country is our border and making sure it's secure. It's a catastrophe and it must stop. A month later, on April 16th, he told reporters, the Biden border catastrophe remains the number one priority of the House Republicans. And in response to the failed attempt to oust him from his position, I heard Johnson say that we have important issues to deal with, like the border and sound government. Took him a couple of seconds to think of something other than the border problems. I have an idea. How about global warming, which has led to catastrophe after catastrophe in our world and in our country? If you're worried about immigrants crossing the southern border, how about the wildfire smoke crossing the northern border? How about the Category 4 and 5 hurricanes crossing the eastern borders? How about the Category 4 tornadoes well inside all of those borders, wreaking deadly havoc in the American heartland and southern states? These are the real catastrophes that we must stop. To ignore them and to distract our attention from them with a single political wedge issue, falsely claiming that we're being invaded by millions and millions of murderers and terrorists, while continuing to ignore the deadly and devastating impacts of climate change, and while we're at it, gun violence by our fellow Americans that are already happening within our borders, truly impacting the lives of millions and millions, is pure evil. We have so many challenges, like affordable health care, adequately funding public education, housing and homelessness, political gridlock, and so many others, preventing humanity from progressing. We have to stop focusing. We have to stop focusing on what's good for ourselves, our party, our nation, and start asking what will best promote human well-being and individual freedom and fulfillment. Anything less is pure evil. Thank you.
Please stand as you're willing and able and join us in the final song, 1064, Blue Boat Home. Though sun my sail and moon my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heaven in our beautiful blue boat. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sail a song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
All right, before we have our benediction, Gab, thank you for reminding me. I've promised those who attend our first service that you get some of these doggy truths. They're exclusive to the first service attenders. And this is on a card that Joyce and Elizabeth gifted me with some time ago. So it's got several sayings on it. I promise to give you one a week until it's done, and I've missed two. So I'm going to give you two today, okay? So the first one is from Rita Rudner. And this piece of doggy wisdom is, I wonder if other dogs think poodles are members of a weird religious cult. And this one from Ann Landers. Don't accept your dog's admiration as conclusive evidence that you are wonderful. Thank you.
For the benediction this morning by Martin Luther King, I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. This is why temporarily defeated is love. This is why love temporarily defeated is stronger than evil triumphant. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.